Yeah, it doesn't matter where you go in the world, we have completely different weather. Our weather is changing so drastically, and it's always towards the extreme. Rarely do you get weather that's getting more suitable for humans to live inside. These extremes are getting worse and worse. For example, here in Ecuador, we have had so much rain, and I'll really simplify it for you. Every morning when you wake up, a wheelbarrow this deep is full of water and it's overrunning. That's how much water we've had in the last 2 months. It's almost unbearable dealing with this amount of water all the time. It's just too much, and it hasn't stopped. I want to explain this weather destroying the planet a little bit different. So I have so much rain here that I would love to give it somebody who lives in the desert. I would love to say, here, look, give me some of your sunshine and I will give you some of my water. It doesn't work like that. So this idea of weather being the biggest influence in human future is very alarming, and I will explain what's going on. This hill, for example, was completely covered in vegetation. Now all that vegetation is gone. So that's what's happening with this nasty weather, this unpredictable weather that isn't normal. It is peeling the skin off the planet. That is the big problem, is all this topsoil and vegetation is being constantly removed. And that causes the problem, is that we have this bare dirt syndrome that is making the world get hotter, making the vegetation not being able to do its oxygen CO2 exchange. All those things are really the biggest problem right now of environmental disasters.
It's really important to understand that what's really going on here is we're losing all the topsoil. And that topsoil is the best way to regulate the temperatures on our planet's surface. Without the vegetation, it is a lost cause.
You know, it's interesting. This is my secondary river. I had to close it down the best I can because we're having so much water entering these areas, and all this soil and all this gravel and sand used to be upstream. So what's happening is, and I don't hear anybody talking about this, you know, we lost all this soil when we had this flood, or we lost all this soil with this typhoon. Nobody talks about soil loss, this precious material that keeps everything green. So Ecuador is just as guilty. They have all these massive landslides. No one is protecting the soil. No one is building, you know, mechanisms to stop the soil from washing away. This water is so full of soil. You can see the tea color. It is just loaded with brown material that used to be topsoil up on the hills everywhere. You multiply that by 20 years of this type of rain, what the end result is, you only have a gravelly, crappy soil left over that gets harder and harder to grow on top of. Agriculture has the same problem. All our soils are washing into the oceans. All our soils are washing into rivers. And we are already in such trouble with our soils. They are so energy deficient. We're going to have a hard time growing anything. So you have all these natural disasters that are going to cause us to lose more and more soil coverage, more and more vegetation coverage. The planet's going to get hotter and hotter, or cooler and cooler. And what's going to happen is the victim, the biggest victim in all these natural disasters is the soil. It just gets wiped out, taken away, never to be replaced. It's really interesting. Where does all this soil go? This river, for example, goes to the Amazon. So the Amazon is filling up with all the great soil. And it's getting shallower. And this soil is actually pollution. It, you know, contaminates the rivers. It fills up the rivers. It makes things a lot harder to live inside those rivers because of all this movement of materials, gravels tumbling, stones tumbling, the water completely contaminated with soils that used to be able to grow vegetation and crops. So this cycle of inclement, nasty, unusual weather has this side effect that nobody talks about, and that is, us losing all this valuable black soil that is just washing away for no reason. And it's a vicious cycle that has to be stopped somehow. And the secret, in my opinion, is keeping the soil in place where it is, having it always planted, having structures built to contain that soil so it doesn't go into the river in the first place, and keeping everything covered with vegetation the best we can. Unfortunately, we are actually getting to the point where these extreme weathers are gobbling up the resources in such a way. For example, the Andes are getting all this water right now, and that water is missing somewhere else. Some place is getting such extreme heat and it's burning up certain areas of the planet, and other places might be getting cooler. Whatever it may be, there is no regulation that is happening that is still in some type of order. What's happening now is, with the soil depletion, the vegetation disappearing from the surface of the planet, this weather distribution problem beginning to get greater every day. For example, the rainforest, the Amazon, was drying up, and we have all this moisture, as an example. Other places are experiencing these really bizarre weather patterns. But what's really happening is these weather patterns are attacking our vegetation coverage. They're attacking the soil coverage. And it's getting worse, and it's becoming a problem. So this idea of keeping the planet cool and keeping the planet covered has got to be the biggest mission. And this coverage can be different than what we think. If we cover the planet with, grasses and smaller items, not large trees, what happens is the erosion doesn't take away the soil. The birds will show up bringing tree seeds. It'll be this cycle of jump-starting soils, vegetation, simple forms of vegetation, to get this planet covered with green life again. So this mission of planting trees might not necessarily be the best way of dealing with it. The best way, in my opinion, is slowing down the rate of water leaving the soil and entering rivers. So slowing down the flow of water, capturing that water, having plant material to absorb that water to slow it down, and then the trees will automatically show up. If you have moisture, wildlife, and all those other things that are needed to start growing trees, guess what? Those trees will show up without any human interference.